Hello, everyone. Welcome to Educational Norm. Tonight we have a special guest, a former student of mine from Kent State University, the Golden Flashes. This is Nick McClure, who is currently in his second year as a sixth grade ELA and a seventh grade social studies teacher at Grand Valley Middle School. And I know for a fact that you went to Grand Valley until you were like in middle school, and then I think you went to Bristol.
Yep. Yes, that is true. That is
Okay,
in
good.
fact.
I'm glad I got my facts straight. Full disclosure, I just learned that, so I can't even hide the fact that I didn't know that. Uh, I always assumed you were a Grand Valley guy because ever since I've known you, you coach there, you talk about it like it's your home, and obviously it is. And
Yes.
I was happy for you that you got a teaching job back in Grand Valley.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That feeling is like it's insanely mutual. I love Bristol and I love my time over there from eighth grade to high school, but there just wasn't that it just wasn't home. Like I was born and raised here in Orwell. I grew up in the trailer park across town and I take a lot of pride in that. And I was so excited to come back. I tried to come back and coach rec basketball at 19, and that turned into JV girls basketball, and then that turned into substitute teaching, to then ended up being substitute custodian, and then here we are. Long story, but
Well, but I think that is just typical for any small town. Once you're in a system, you just do whatever it takes to make the school and the people work. It's not a bureaucracy whatsoever. It's a family that just comes together and they do whatever is needed to make things happen. So when you told me that list of things just now of what you did, none of it surprised me. I'm surprised you didn't have like milking cow duty in the morning or anything like that, because those that aren't familiar with Orwell, there might be more cows than people in Orwell.
I wouldn't doubt that at all. Um, there are people that I work with at the school that legitimately milk cows before coming to work. I
Yeah.
that is a
Well,
fact.
I grew up, just north of you in Geneva, and we had that basically south of 534 was the farming community. And
Yep.
my summer job a couple times was to bale hay in the summer, and that is not a fun job for anybody. But that's,
No.
I cut my teeth there because I had a girlfriend that her uncle ran the farm and he paid good money. So, oh, sure, I'll do it. Boy, was
Yeah.
I got suckered into that one. So,
Been there, done that. I did it in shorts once. I
yeah.
wasn't thinking ahead, but like, I went out there in cargo shorts and basketball shoes, and it was a terrible day.
Yeah, your basketball shoes were probably the cleanest they've ever been because they got wiped clean by the hay. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's not fun. So the reason that you're here tonight is I want you to share your experiences about your first couple years of teaching and also the training since I had you at Kent, your student teaching and all those things, because I have an audience of people that are either getting into education or in their first or second year. And there are things that you don't even plan on, things that happen that I just want you to shed a little light because you've been a new teacher a lot sooner, a lot more recently than I have. My first year of teaching was 1991, so we're just a little bit off there. But I want to talk about that piece in particular and see what kind of advice you have for those new teachers. So let's start off with your student teaching experience because that's really where I've started to know you. So tell us about your student teaching experience and what you gained from that experience.
my experience was I think it was really unique because I did eighth grade language arts for 8 weeks at they had like a junior high campus, and then I had to go do my other 8 weeks at a different elementary campus for sixth grade social studies. So
What district was that? What district was that?
that was at Ashtabula area city schools. So I was
Oh,
at Lakeside Junior High, and then I was at Erie Intermediate.
okay.
Um, very, very interesting experience being from Grand Valley and Bristol. The classrooms that I was in as a student had 20 kids in them. And then now I went up to Lakeside and I was teaching groups of, 30 plus. So that was a huge adjustment. Um, but when I got there, I remembered what you told us in class, and that was that you had never really sent out a student teacher or saw one that you felt was really ready and could do the job right now by themselves. So I had like a checklist of all sorts of things that I thought were going to be the overlooked items that if I was in the classroom on the first day of school, these are the things that I need to have figured out. So that was the first thing I started asking when I got there. What's your homework policy? Do you allow late work? Where do you have things turned in? Because I know that seems like an irrelevant thing. We're so worried about the standards and all this and that, but that stuff's really important. Having an established routine matters. What's your classroom management going to be like? What's your lighting situation? Like, for example, in my classroom, my lights are just too bright. So I put there's these covers that go over them. They're magnetic. So when you look at the lights in my classroom, it just looks like you're standing outside looking up at trees. So immediately when you walk into my classroom, there's this calming, just, uh, it's not so bad. It's not so bad.
That is nice. That's a great feeling to walk into. I do appreciate that. And I want to clarify, I had a few student teachers that were really good, but I want to point to the fact that there are very few people that are really ready to run a classroom on their own coming out
Yes.
as a student teacher. There's no reason they should be ready. So
Right.
just to clarify, I don't want to badmouth any of my
Yeah.
old student
Yeah.
teachers.
I was not trying. I don't want to insult anybody.
No, no, no,
Um,
that's good. It's
and,
all good.
and I'm following up with this by saying I was not prepared. And these were the things that, had I not known, it would have made this so much worse. Um, Mainly, my biggest advice for upcoming student teachers or first or second year teachers is just figuring out your method for your madness, and all of your classroom management being established is important. How are you going to get the attention of your students is the first one for me. Every setting of the building that I'm in, if I yell OH, they're all going to stop what they're doing and yell IO back at me, and then just wait quietly until they get some form of instruction. Um,
I love that,
and
by
then
the way.
Oh, again, I didn't invent that. You
No,
know better than anybody. No one's reinventing the wheel. I found that one through
no.
a coach, and it was excellent because I was
Yeah.
doing high five. I would go high five, and seventh graders were kind of like, they didn't really find that cool. But when I go 08, they're like, oh, yo.
Well, I started my teaching career in Michigan, and I probably have some people that will be watching this from Michigan. So I would hate to use that in a Michigan classroom and see what I got because it might be just the opposite of what we're looking for.
I always forget that you spent time over there.
Yeah, I did. It was good. I really enjoy Michigan. It's a great place.
Yeah. Um,
Again, to clarify and not make anybody angry.
the other really important thing, yeah, no one's mad at me.
No.
The next thing that I feel is super important, and I think being a student teacher gives you the best opportunity for this, is learning how to build rapport with the students. And there's no better time to do it than with a group that you don't know, they don't know you. And if you're a student teacher, there's a good chance you'll never see them again. But there's an even better chance that you will see them again if you get hired and you'll just jump right back in. That happens all the time. So learning how to build a rapport with all of the students is important. And that was something that I don't want to say I struggled with it, because we know that I was able to establish a rapport with almost any group of students that I stepped in the room with. But it's easier for me to establish that with students that were a lot like me as a student, the struggling group. The higher ed students that I might have that are maybe not as tolerant of my energy, it's a little bit harder to establish a routine because they don't necessarily thrive off of that same I guess that same mindset. Um, but learning how to establish a rapport with students is crucial for sure.
Well,
Because
and I think you bring up a good point. It's easy to get along with kids that get along with you, but if you're not reaching those other kids, you do have to find a way. And student teaching is the prime time just to try different things because if you fail miserably, there's a teacher to back you up, and then you can learn from that. So I like that advice, and I think that the high energy, sometimes that energy, especially with your high functioning, gifted kids, might be viewed as what's the word I'm looking for? It might be viewed as something like a deterrent to them in their
Mhm.
learning because you are looking at the whole picture and they're just looking at academics. So they almost get turned off by the energy. Just let me do my thing. Just let me sit here and do my thing. Don't bother me.
That's exactly right. And I get that too, because I'll say it. That group I have them early in the morning, and I'll just give them the look like, you want me to shut up now? I usually say, did I explain that too much? Do I need to shut up? And they'll just go, yeah. All right, cool. Let's keep it moving. I don't mind that at all. I love when they're honest with me, and they'll tell me like, Mr. McClure, we're good. Like, we're fine.
So
Um,
I do have a little bit of a a background question, just so people know. We talked a lot when we were in class about you had this feeling of being an imposter in this world of education. And with that imposter syndrome that you have going, that you had going, I hopefully you don't have it anymore because you definitely belong. Um, Explain, your how you handled school when you were going through school and how that helps you in your teaching now.
Um, I was a terrible student. I was all over the place. My dad did everything he possibly could have to make sure we were all ready to go. We had everything we needed. We were always provided for. But because of the fact that he was doing all of that on his own for the majority, he didn't have to worry about me. I wasn't getting in any trouble, but my grades and how I did in school was not something I was focused on. So this is true. I failed. I don't mind airing this out. I failed fifth grade math, seventh grade math, eighth grade math, fifth grade, sixth grade, and seventh grade language arts, and I teach middle school language arts. So clearly there was some disconnect there. Um, so as for my background as a student, I feel that the imposter syndrome, I'll probably never get away from it, but it's something more that I like or I navigate it on a day-to-day basis. Some days I feel like I am meant to be here and no one could be a better teacher than me. And then some days I just don't. And I'm sure you felt that same way. Part of what helps, and I don't have days like last year, I had more bad days than good days. This year, I don't have nearly as many bad days with the imposter syndrome. And I think that just comes from preparation and then just more experience. Like experience is the main thing. Like just I always say that teaching is like stand-up comedy. You have to get in front of the crowd, you have to rehearse the material, and you have to screw it up and bomb and get booed off stage and keep doing it. And you have to know if the crowd boos you off and you're bombing, how do you get the crowd back? And that all just comes from experience. So the imposter syndrome's never going to leave,
I
but something
I'm
to
with
help
you on
with.
that one. I was not a great student either. I did enough to get by. And it never really goes away. I still feel there are times, even though this is my 34th year in education, I still feel there's times that I need to know more, I need to learn more. And now I have to stand in front of groups of teachers and students like you and, spew my knowledge, but it's really not knowledge. It's exactly what you said. It's the experience. And I think that's what makes me be able to do my job now is I've had 34 years of different experiences and not 34 years of the same experience. And that's really a big thing. I stole that line from my brother-in-law. I love that line. Um, but it really is true when I've been in multiple districts in Michigan. I worked out at some schools in Utah, and then I've been in several districts here in Ohio. And now I've been in about 20 to 25 different districts since I've left the public education role. So, I mean, I've seen a lot, and that's not knowledge. That's just experience and seeing what works for people. I'm really dumb, actually. I'm the dumbest one in my house, but it really is something just if you are open and listening, you'll learn a lot. So I like that idea.
Yeah, I agree. I I don't. First off, you're not dumb. I understand what you're saying, but you're not dumb.
I
Um,
can fake anything.
I so what you're really saying is that you are just a really hard worker, and that's what I was getting at. Like I'm never the smartest person in the room. My brother and sister were very book smart. Like they still are. My brother is still really smart. He does great at work and with what he's doing. My sister's doing excellent in her world. But I just had to work harder. I just had to dig deeper and figure out ways that worked for me. It just wasn't easy. Um, but it all falls together eventually,
Well, so
and
with
it clicks.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but with your background, how does that help you now as a teacher?
it's it's probably why I love it so much because it shows I have that perspective of how to get to the most rewarding part of the job. Understanding the students that just no one can get to. They get so I have a few students that are like this, and I was the same way that I would get so frustrated, red in the face, I'd want to cry just because I know this assignment's coming up. I probably know the material, but that's totally irrelevant because my anxiety's taken over. So having that experience and knowing being a super anxious, just mess of a student that I was, it helps me understand because a lot of the teachers that I've seen, not where I work now, I would say, but during student teaching were not like me. They were the smart students. They loved school, and that's why they came back. They weren't the students that I was, which was got your butt kicked and came back for retribution to try to turn it around and help some other students. So I think that it gives me a really, really unique perspective on how to help and who needs help because
Yeah,
I didn't look like I needed help, but I was
you were
a
out
lot.
there, man. I didn't know when you were going through your issues with your grades. I was like, holy smokes, that's a lot. And I'm sure your dad was just fit to be tied because you're a good kid, but man, that that was unorganization, and it was with, ADHD or whatever you may have been diagnosed with at the time.
Yep.
I,
Yep.
I sort of guessed that based on our interactions. I probably let the cat out of the bag on that one, but
Yeah.
those are all great perspectives to have walking into a classroom, especially if you have a fully inclusive classroom, which I'm sure you do with your social studies class, and you're trying to teach kids English who might be 2 or 3 grades or more behind in their reading levels, and you have to teach them all. They're all your kids, so that to me is something that's a huge advantage for you because you've been in that role, you've been in that situation. So, with that being said, the classrooms that you're teaching right now, you have a sixth grade ELA and a seventh grade social studies. What are some of the more challenging things you have going on in those classes for those kids?
The writing. It's all writing. Everything is writing. And I don't like to point fingers and blame anything, but I'm a little bit of a victim, but I enable it because technology makes it much harder to deal with because I myself, like spelling is not a strong suit of mine, I've realized in my 20s. And I never would have caught on to that if I wasn't working in education and was writing by hand. If everything was typed the way that a lot of people their lives are, that skill doesn't really get thought of a whole lot. So writing and spelling have taken a huge hit. Um, I That's honestly number one because even in my social studies class, we'll have days where I have to shut it down and we do writing workshops because we just need more practice.
Well, I think also if there's a book that I just finished, The Anxious Generation, that talks about just use of social media and technology in general. And it's worth a read because I mean, you're part of that generation that they're talking about, and it's an easy read. So in your spare time, with all your coaching and things that you do, uh, read this massive book that I'm recommending and see what you think of it. And I'll put it up on the screen here so you can see it. And
Cool.
but it's a great book that I think will help understand kids even more than what we do. But I think in that book, and I might be confusing this with another, that when you write something by hand, it becomes 820% more ingrained in your system, in your brain, than as if you were to type it. So
Yeah,
that's an amazing stat. And we often rely, especially in today's day and age, on that technology. So I'll if you don't have it, if you don't find it, let me know. I'll give you where you can pick it up. But that's a good one. Um,
yeah.
so with your teaching right now and in the school district that you're in, I sort of alluded to it earlier that you're in a small school. So what other responsibilities do you have besides teaching that impact teaching?
Um, so at my district, I, I I teach the classes that I teach on a day to day. And I also coach seventh and eighth grade girls basketball. I also coach JV or high school JV girls softball. I substitute for lunch duty, so if they ever need an extra hand on lunch duty, I'm Johnny on the spot for that. And then during the summertime, I transition right back to custodian like I was before I went to college, and I work with the custodians all summer again. So I do a lot of stuff around teaching.
Well, and that's something else that I mentioned when we were in class together, that some districts look for that person that's willing to do those other things, and others are like, no, you're just a teacher, so just teach. But Grand Valley, you're going to be asked to do a lot of different things, which is, I think, a great thing. And
I agree.
when you're doing your lunch duty, how often do you get to talk to those kids like that
Oh,
versus in the classroom?
it's so when I have to do lunch duty, some days I'm like, oh, like I really just needed. because I always work through lunch. I'm sure you did the same thing. Usually lunch is when I'm grading something. So I usually get kind of stressed out and overwhelmed when I don't have it. But I go down there, and when I get to just walk, I'm like, it's like a shark, and I'm just going through rows of cafeteria tables, and they're all like, Mr. McClure, and they just want to talk to you about your day, and
Hmm.
just giving them the time to just explain something that is important to them is the highlight of their day.
Right.
Um, just sitting down next to a student and just making a comment like, "Oh, I didn't realize you like NASCAR," and then they'll just start spewing about whatever it is that they're interested in. And that's not, like you said, that's not a conversation you have in the classroom. I wish I could. I wish I could talk to every student about whatever it is that makes them extremely happy. Every day, but I can't. So in lunch, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, and that's part of the coaching thing too. You get to know the kids in a different way. And I love that because I had the kids in middle school and I would learn about them and know them as a person. And then when I was able to coach them in high school, it was like I know this person. I know what they are deep down and I know how to help them or, encourage them or whatever they needed at that time. So I think there's value in teaching in the middle school, coaching varsity sports or JV sports, but also that interaction on that daily basis at the lunchroom is a big deal. And you're giving me too much credit. I like my eating, so I always ate lunch. I made sure that
Oh,
happened. It
I
was
get
always
made
a good thing.
I get made fun of a lot from my fellow team, the guys that are down there on lunch duty with me, because the cafeteria staff at Grand Valley is hands down. I can speak for the entire state. I can speak for the nation. They're the best. No one is better than them. They take care of me, and they'll make sure my lunch tray is heavy. So I definitely get made fun of for that. But hey, I've got to eat, and those school hamburgers, they keep me going.
That may be why I like you. I was in the same exact boat. You make good friends with the staff behind the counter, and your tray is loaded. I did come across a cafeteria when I was up in Michigan. I'm going to give a shout out to them. Ida High School, which is really close to Dundee, they had a group of grandmothers and mothers that worked the kitchen, and they would bake and make food from scratch for the entire district every day. And they
That's
had homemade cinnamon rolls that they made that were, I think, the best cinnamon rolls I've ever had. And they had them every day. But they were just back there baking away. So yeah, those are good people to get to know really well. Them, the custodial staff, your secretaries, your office administrators, those are the people that run the school. I don't care what anybody says. They know everything about everybody and everything has a place. They know where the tunnels go under the school. They know where everything is. They know when it was built. Those are the
Yep.
people you really need to make friends with.
You're you're the second person that's ever said that to me, and it's funny. I'm gonna give her a shout out. So she's like my number one mentor in my career, and she was my sixth grade, seventh grade ELA teacher. She was always trying to make sure I got it right. But Kim Trisket, she says that all the time. That whatever district you work in, those need to be your number one allies because those are going to be who you're going to be asking for help 24/7.
I'm going to blow your mind. I know Kim.
You do know Kim? How do
Yeah.
you know Kim? Kim
Volleyball.
is volleyball.
Yep.
Yeah, it checks out.
Yep.
It checks out.
Yeah.
They're an incredible family. They are
I
yeah,
met
they're amazing.
I met one of the daughters, or I ran into one of the daughters. I didn't meet her because I knew her from a long time ago, but I can't remember where it was. I go, "You're a Trisket from I know you." It was one of those I had to recall who she was. All right,
Yeah.
let's transition from your student teaching going into your first year. What was the biggest difference between student teaching and your first year of teaching?
My last part of student teaching was at an elementary campus. So we were in a contained room all day, except for about an hour and a half. They'd go to math and recess. So then when I got to Grand Valley and got my job, it's a standard traditional bell schedule. So that was the first thing that I needed some time to get used to. Um, and then not needing approval. Like I would go to Kim for everything. I still do. I run everything past Kim just to make sure that what I'm doing makes sense. But it's not in a sense of am I allowed to do this? So some student teachers can do whatever they want. When I was at Erie Intermediate with Mr. Baylor, he was the man. He taught me a lot. He really was like, "This is all you. Figure it out," and let me do what I wanted. So having that experience was good. So I was comfortable walking in like, all right, let's do what I want to do. And, and if it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well. It was tough getting used to the first couple of weeks not having someone in the room. Just as like I would look at my cooperating teachers um, like a stand-up comedian looking at a relative in the front row just for that comfort. Like, I see you. Do you approve of what I'm doing? Like, give me a nod. As a college professor, you probably have students that just sit there in your lecture and nod at you and let you know that I'm listening. I'm listening. So I would look for that. So that was a little tough to get used to. Um, but I felt like I did a good job of trying to narrow down and figure out all of the nitty gritty details before I jumped in. So a lot of it just was like more of just working through the standards. And that's what I think is important to do after the fact. Like it's important to have the standards in your back pocket in student teaching, yes, but that is not the most crucial part of your student teaching experience.
Right.
And I'm glad I did not prioritize that as much and didn't worry about memorizing them like my life depended on it. I kind
Well,
of thought I needed to.
well, when you look at why people leave the profession, it's rarely because of the subject matter that they teach. It's about all the other stuff that goes on in the classroom. So that's where I think, like you were saying earlier, you have to be out on stage and you have to do and experience those failures and successes to really fine tune what you're doing. So, with that being said, because you're in your classroom by yourself, what were your indicators that you were actually reaching them, your kids for the first time? How did they react to you?
They enjoyed the lesson. I noticed that they would enjoy the lesson and they actually completed it and learned the standard like at task. The first thing that I did, so I noticed the first couple of days in that my approach was a little bit more of like an eighth grade approach for the class, not a sixth grade approach. I needed to dial it back and have a little more fun. So I called my cooperating teacher, like a good teacher would do, call someone that has more experience and ask for help. And I was like, do you have anything fun that is tied to argumentative writing so I can get that in at the very beginning of the year, but it's still fun. They'll have no idea that it's a writing task. And it was a like a camper uh, animal murder mystery where like six students are in the woods and their pet pig got eaten, and we have to figure out who did it for survival. It was crazy. It was absurd, but they it resonated with them. They had fun with it, and they learned. And that was that. I'll never forget that lesson. And that was probably my first successful one I had on my own. And that was like
Well,
the fourth day of school.
there's two things there that I want to stress. You reached out and you asked for help. A lot of new teachers will not do that because they don't want to show that they don't know what they're doing, and then it builds up and builds up and builds up, and then then they have to unload. I mean, it's not a good situation. So that's great. And the second one, your relevance of that lesson. There's probably a lot of kids in your classroom that had pet pigs, so of course it hit home.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yes,
do I do everything I can to tie it back into where we're from. We're about to start a unit on argumentative writing next week, and our curriculum just it couldn't have been more perfect. There's a unit in the curriculum that's all about looking through an animal's eyes. And there are a couple of poems that go with it, and then there's an informational text on, or excuse me, an argumentative text on whether or not wild animals should be kept as pets or not. And there was a fur and urine farm right over in Montville, which is bordering the district, that was shut down for malpractice and all sorts of terrible things. So just routing anything like that, and the kids are instantly like, "Oh, that's a big deal because that is something that happens here." I could teach
right,
them about Egypt, and that's cool and all, but that doesn't hit home. But when they
right.
see stuff like that, that could be next door. So they
Yeah,
really care about that stuff.
it is important to bring that in. And we always talk about you have to build on their prior knowledge. Well, they don't have prior knowledge on Egypt necessarily, but they do, especially if they work on the farm. They know about animals, they know about growing seasons, they know about plants, so, and they know about hunting down there too. I mean, deer hunting's huge.
Yeah,
So those are the things that even though they might not be your typical educational pieces, there are definitely ways you can link that into your lessons.
yeah, absolutely.
So
And then, oh, I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go
I was
ahead.
just that spark. It's like just sparking the learning with that little bit of just we kind of have a connection here. They're like,
Yeah.
wait, what? That's 10 minutes away. And then just me being me, we'll read through the passage and we'll talk about the local place that had issues, and we'll pull it up on my big new line board. Let's look it up on the map. How far is it from here? And they just a real hands-on thing, and they love it. They
That's
absolutely
great.
love it. You got to make the connections.
So when you're teaching these lessons, and you've already mentioned a ton of things that are very hands-on, and I can only picture just because it's you, they're going to be up and moving a lot.
Yeah.
They have to be. Um, Tell me about a day that didn't go so well and how you handled it.
um, I I've had a lot more of those days in social studies than I have in ELA. But one that I really think about a lot with ELA, and it's funny because I fixed it. I fixed it, and now I use it all the time. Um, I created this assignment last year called the Argumentative I Spy because I'm all hands on and trying to, and I learned from my mistakes as a student teacher at Lakeside Junior High. We did way too much writing in an 8 weeks, time crunch. But I did what I was asked to do, and that was that. So when I got to last year, I was thinking of ways to teach the writing process without actually writing right away and running out of that stamina. And what I came up with was I'll write 5 essays, which doesn't take all too much time, and then we'll break down a color system. The hook is this color, the thesis statement is this color, topic sentences are this color, all of your citations are this color, and it's an I Spy. And it turns into a game, which sounds super fun, but I didn't explain it very well, and they didn't know. They didn't really. I expected them to know the vocabulary last year prior to stepping in, like a hook, thesis. I didn't expect them to understand argumentative, but they were like deer in headlights, and they came up to me the next day because I signed it for homework. I said, "Try your best. We'll go over it tomorrow. I just want to see how we do." And it just was a failure. I got like 6 emails about it. They had no idea what to do, and parents were all confused because they were like, "We didn't know we needed all these highlighters." It was just a mess. So then once I explained all of the vocabulary, we went back a few steps, and I taught a little bit better. And we went through the first essay together, kind of model it. And probably would have been a great idea from the jump. They were ready to go, and now that's probably my favorite assignment we do every year, even though it's only my second year, because you just have to see it. And when I've never seen argumentative writing become a fun game like that, where
I
they're
like that.
just yeah, it's little things. I don't know.
Well, I think that there's another lesson in what you're doing because you've created this thing. You know, you have this vision of how it's going to look in your classroom, and then when it doesn't, a lot of people will just go, "Well, that was horrible," and just pitch the whole thing. I like that you did like an autopsy on it, basically of this worked, this didn't. Let's make it work in this next time because I think there's value. I just didn't fine tune it right. I need to make these little adjustments, and now it's one of your favorite lessons. But that's something that AI could do to some extent, but
Mhm.
I find joy in making those things. That's to me, that's the fun part of teaching. If AI could take attendance for me and make it right, I'd let it do that. But I want to do those things that you just mentioned. Like I want to create that lesson and come up with something new that nobody's ever seen before and see if I can make it work. So that's what
Yeah,
I think that again, I think we're on the same page for a lot of things here, Nick. You, we have the same basic idea of what education should be, and um, you're living it on a daily basis. So I like that you could pick a lesson that didn't go well and how you turned it around. That's good. So next step, you talked about transition from student teaching and that writing was something that just didn't go well. So how big was the difference going from your first year of teaching to your second year of teaching? And I know that without getting into any details, I know you went through a lot in the beginning of the year. So what was what's your second year like now that you're settled in a little bit more compared to your first year?
it's entirely different. I don't want it to sound arrogant, but student teachers or soon to be student teachers, please hear this and know that the first year is by far the worst. And I, without getting into the details, going through what will definitely be probably the most difficult time of my life in the beginning of the school year, my job wasn't as difficult at all. Going from year one to everything was much easier. Not the first day of school doesn't feel like the first day of school. At least it didn't for me the second time. Establishing all those routines, I did everything the exact same this year that I did last year. So I didn't have to come up with where are you going to turn all your assignments in, or what's my late work policy, or how am I going to do my bell ringer work, or any of that. It was all the exact same, just new students. So I actually thought it was fine. I didn't have really any issues. That was something that I was pleasantly surprised with for sure. Was it was just not too bad at all.
Well, and that's something that getting through that first year is tough for a lot of people because you are trying to establish all of these things and learn the curriculum and make the connections and all these things, and you want to be the perfect person, and that's not going to be, that's never going to happen. But then that second year, like you said, you have this background knowledge already that you can now build on. And if there was something that needed to be changed, you can change it, and it's not a huge deal. I can just make that transition. Oh, you want me to do this now? Well, I can do that. That's not a big deal because I know what else I have already in my back pocket I can pull out anytime I need to. So,
Yeah,
your advice to first year teachers, get through that first year and then you're going to be fine and you're
yeah.
going to come up with systems. So tell me what's going on this second year. I know you're coaching and all this other stuff. So tell me something that's new in the life of Nick McClure as a teacher in the second year.
Um, Something new. I guess something that's new. I kind of did this last year, but not really. It was real like a real small role. I just showed up and went with our district to the YSU English Festival and was a monitor. This year I'll be there for both days because our teacher at the district that orchestrates and runs the program for us at Grand Valley is going to retire soon, and she would like to hand that off to me, which I would love. So I'm working towards prepping for that as well, which is a little scary, but I'm excited for that. That's something that I always wanted to go to as a student, but I was never a smart enough student to go.
So, so I didn't know the answer to that question, but just knowing you, I knew that there wasn't going to be anything that's just going to be the same old, same old. There was going to be something different. And that's just who you are, which is how you grow as an educator. So, what's the next step for you professionally? You've been now in the classroom for 2 years, and I know it's early in your career, and I'm sure you want to get many more years of teaching and coaching on your belt. But what's the next step for you professionally?
There's a lot of interesting seminars that the intervention specialist and on my team has been talking to me about. I'd like to go to those. I want to go to as many different events, seminars, conferences that I can. I'd like to, within the next 2 years or so, start working on my master's. I think that's really important. And just showing up every day and getting better. That's really my main thing. I truly feel like I'm playing with house money from this point moving forward. Like getting through college was crazy enough for me and getting to this job. So I just want to have fun and get better at it and see what all I can do with the 30 something years I've got. And we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. But step one would be my master's so I can make some more money while I do it and learn some more and just
Well,
keep having fun.
keep having fun. If you can do that, you're gonna be fine. Take as many PD opportunities as you can, learn from different voices, even if it's learning what not to do. Those are always valuable lessons. And I've been through some pretty bad PDs, but I still learn something from them because there is always a nugget in there if you're really looking for it. So I do appreciate that. And I know a lot of, especially young people, I just got done with college. I don't want to do this anymore. It's one of those where it's almost wearing you down, more education, but I love your attitude. I love your approach. I knew you were going to be successful because you're a people person, and that's fits perfect with the middle school. If you're not a people person in middle school, it will drive you crazy. So
Yeah.
I figured it would be a good fit, and it was just a matter of you having confidence in yourself. So I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
I appreciate that. And you're right, because that's all they do in middle school is talk. That's all they do is talk. When you
Well,
ask them not to, they still do. That's all they
yeah,
do is talk.
they're very good at it. You stick with what you're good at. That's their prior knowledge. So why not? So any final advice for incoming new young teachers going into their first role, other than what you've already shared?
um, do what fits you, find your routine, establish just what works best for you and your teaching philosophy, and then thrive in that scene. That's it. That's literally it. That's
Keep
all
it
I can
simple.
say. Yeah, yeah, because I think that what a lot of my cohort got caught up in was overthinking the irrelevant things. Like we spent so much time stressing about the standards and how are we ever, and it just all falls together if you let it. You just have to be willing to figure out the method to your madness. That's all, and expose yourself to anything you can see. If you're a student teacher, I would try to observe every single classroom that you can in your district to just, or I should say, if you're in the middle school, observe everyone in the middle school. Just see all the different classroom management philosophies that you can see everything because that's what you can't see when you get hired.
Right. I think that the overarching theme right now is that manage your classroom management first and then worry about everything else. Get that system set in your mind and how it's going to work. And I do agree that your cohort did overthink a lot of stuff that we talked about. And it's about keeping it simple and making it work for you in the parameters that you're given. So without a doubt, you're speaking the right language there, Nick, and I do appreciate it. So if you're looking to get a hold of Nick, I can put up his email here if you have any questions for a new teacher. So Nick, I want to thank you for your time today and for everybody out there joining us. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, whenever they watch this tonight, it is just a recording. But as always, be kind, be professional, and find solutions. Thank you very much, Nick.
You got it. Thank you for having me.